Emma Thompson's fingers shook around her worn leather wallet as she counted the coins for the third time. The Boston coffee shop buzzed with early morning energy, but the noise faded to a dull hum around her. 25, 50, 75, $1.275. Just enough for a small coffee, barely enough to keep her going. The sleepless night clung to her face. Dark circles under hazel eyes, the faint puffiness of someone who'd spent half the night at her sewing machine. At 28, Emma carried single motherhood like a weight she refused to drop. Her small but growing alterations business, the custom dresses that kept food on the table, the constant math of rent versus fabric versus daycare. After dropping her 6-year-old daughter Lily at daycare that morning, the familiar knot of worry had settled in her stomach again. "Next customer, please," the barista called, jolting Emma from her thoughts. She stepped forward, coins pressed into her palm. As she did, she became aware of the man behind her in line. She couldn't have said why he stood out. Maybe the impeccably tailored charcoal suit, maybe the easy strength in his shoulders, or the warmth in his deep brown eyes when they flicked her way between taps on his phone. "Just a small coffee, please," Emma said softly, already setting her carefully counted change on the counter. She flushed, embarrassed at how long she'd taken to line up each coin. "Wait," a man's voice said behind her. The well-dressed stranger stepped forward. His presence was calm, unhurried, somehow both confident and gentle. "Add a breakfast sandwich to the lady's order," he told the barista. "And I'll have a large Americano." Before Emma could protest, his credit card was already in the barista's hand. "Oh no, please, you don't have to do that," she began. "I insist," he said, turning that unexpectedly familiar smile on her. "Everyone deserves a proper breakfast." As they waited for their drinks, he held out his hand. "I'm Daniel Carter," he said. His gaze lingered on her face with an intensity that made her heart jump. "This might sound strange, but you look really familiar." Emma tightened her grip on her wallet. "Emma Thompson. And thank you." "Really? You didn't have to." "Thompson," he repeated, eyes sharpening slightly. "Did you ever live on Maple Street? House 247? She froze. Images rushed back. A faded yellow house with a swing in the oak tree. A little boy with scraped knees and a missing front tooth. Popsicles melting down their arms in the summer heat. "Danny," she whispered. "Little Danny Carter from next door?" His face broke into a wide grin. "The very same. Hopefully I've grown up a little since then." It had been 23 years since the Carters had moved away, leaving 5-year-old Emma bereft. Now here he was in front of her. No longer the skinny kid chasing butterflies in her backyard, but a polished man who looked like success itself. Their orders came up. Daniel nodded toward an empty table by the window. "Do you have a few minutes?" he asked. "I'd really love to catch up." She should have said no. Her tiny alterations studio needed her, and every hour counted. But something in his expression, some echo of the boy who'd once been her whole world, softened her. "A few minutes," she agreed. Over coffee and the sandwich she couldn't have afforded herself, Emma found herself talking more than she'd meant to. She told him about Lily, about the husband who had walked out 3 years earlier and never looked back, about making a life from hemming wedding gowns and resizing suits in a cramped studio over a Chinese restaurant. She admitted, almost shyly, that she dreamed of one day designing her own line instead of only fixing other people's clothes. Daniel listened like nothing else in the world mattered. His Americano sat mostly untouched. He shared his own story. Starting a tech company from scratch, the long nights and near misses, the recent sale to a large corporation, the difficult divorce that had followed. He left out numbers and headlines, the scale of the buyout, the full ugliness of the legal battle over assets. When his phone started buzzing insistently, he grimaced and glanced at the screen. "Everything okay?" Emma asked. "Just my ex-wife," he said, declining the call. "She's struggling with the divorce settlement." He hesitated, then looked back at Emma. "Listen, I know this is sudden, but would you have dinner with me tonight? For old time's sake." Emma's heart stumbled. The practical part of her listed objections. Daycare pickup, a half-finished bridesmaid's dress due tomorrow, the gulf between his life and hers. But when she met his eyes, she saw the boy who'd sworn she could fly if she jumped from the lowest branch of their treehouse. Before she could respond, the café door banged open. A woman in a flawless designer coat and sky-high heels strode directly toward them, anger crackling off her. "So this is why you're not answering my calls," she said to Daniel, voice loud enough to turn heads. Her gaze swept over Emma with open contempt. "Interesting." Emma's cheeks burned as the tables around them went quiet. Daniel stood, his whole demeanor shifting, from warm to steel in a heartbeat. "Victoria, this is completely inappropriate," he said, voice low but firm. "We're divorced. You can't keep doing this." "Divorced?" she scoffed. "The ink is barely dry and you're already slumming it with—" "That's enough," Daniel cut in. "Emma is an old friend, and my personal life is no longer your concern. Leave, or I'll have security escort you out." Hands shaking, Emma rose. "I should go," she whispered. "Thank you for the coffee and everything." She didn't look back as she hurried out, though she heard Daniel call her name behind her. The cold morning sun hit her as she stepped onto the sidewalk. She gulped air, trying to push down the mix of humiliation and disappointment. What had she been thinking? Their worlds couldn't be further apart. She was halfway down the block when she heard footsteps pounding behind her. "Emma, wait," Daniel called. "Please don't let Victoria ruin this. At least give me a chance to explain." She stopped and turned, her wallet pressed tight in her hand. Her carefully counted coins were still inside, a reminder of her reality. The sun caught his worried expression, and for a fleeting moment she saw the boy who used to bandage her scraped knees with cartoon plasters. "Can we talk somewhere quieter?" he asked, gesturing toward a small park across the street. "I owe you an explanation, and I have so many questions." Against her better judgment, she nodded. They found an empty bench among drifting autumn leaves. Daniel loosened his tie, some of his polished sheen slipping. "Victoria and I," he began, running a hand through his hair. "Our divorce is fresh and complicated. The sale of my company 6 months ago made everything worse. She convinced herself I timed it to cheat her on the settlement. She's been furious ever since." Emma thought of her own divorce, the lack of papers even. Just an empty space where a husband used to be, and unpaid bills in his wake. "That sounds difficult," she said quietly, fingers tracing the edge of her wallet. "The truth is," he said, his voice softening, "seeing you this morning brought everything back. Do you remember the treehouse your dad built us?" A smile tugged at her mouth despite everything. "With the secret compartment in the floor, where we hid our treasure map. Stained with tea to make it look ancient," he said, his eyes lighting. "And the time capsule we buried in my backyard, with your favorite Hot Wheels car and my mom's old costume jewelry," Emma recalled. "Those were the best days of my childhood," Daniel said. "Everything felt possible." "I dug it up, you know," Emma admitted. "After you left. I was so mad you'd gone without a goodbye. I took the car and reburied the rest. I still have it. The car. I know it's silly." His expression fell. "I wanted to say goodbye. That morning my parents shoved us into the car. My dad had lost his job. We were about to lose the house. They were too proud to tell the neighbors. I begged to see you one last time. They said no. I waited at my window," Emma said, tears pricking. "For weeks. Mom tried to explain you'd moved far away, but I kept thinking you'd come back. I wrote you letters." Daniel leaned closer. "I wrote you letters too. Dozens. My mother never mailed them. Said it would be easier to make a clean break. I found them years later in the attic. All addressed to you. All opened." A mother with a stroller passed by, her little girl about Lily's age squealing with laughter. Emma's heart clenched. "I really need to get to work," she said, standing. "My clients are waiting." "Your shop," Daniel said, rising too. "Where is it? I'd love to see what you do." She hesitated. The cramped studio above the Chinese restaurant on Carlton Street felt a world away from his polished life. "It's just a small place on Carlton," she said. "Nothing fancy." "I'd still like to see it," he said. Then more carefully, "About dinner tonight. I understand if you'd rather not. After all this. But I'd love a chance to see you again. To hear more about your life. About Lily." Her phone buzzed. Daycare. She glanced at the screen and her breath hitched. Lily had a fever. It was rising. They needed her to come immediately. "I'm sorry," she said, grabbing her bag. My daughter's sick. I have to go. Let me drive you, Daniel said at once. Please. It's the least I can do. She opened her mouth to refuse, but another urgent text flashed. Lily's temperature was climbing quickly. Okay, she said. Thank you. Daniel's black Mercedes seemed to belong on a movie set, not on her worn Boston side street. As they drove to the daycare, he asked questions about Lily, her favorite games, her school, her art, listening with genuine concern. It was a sharp contrast to her ex-husband, who had barely remembered his daughter's birthday even before he left. At the daycare, Emma rushed in. Daniel stayed in the car. Minutes later she emerged, Lily limp in her arms, cheeks flushed and eyes glassy. Daniel had already cleared the back seat. His suit jacket lay folded as a makeshift pillow. My place is on Beacon Hill, Emma said, torn between gratitude and the worry that she was dragging him further from his world. Just tell me where to turn, he said, adjusting the temperature controls when he noticed Lily shivering. From the passenger seat, Emma saw him watch them in the rearview mirror. His expression softened every time Lily whimpered. She stroked her daughter's hair, mind racing through the appointments she'd have to cancel, the lost income, the expensive bridesmaid's dress due tomorrow that she'd barely started. The bride had already paid half up front. Emma had spent that money on Lily's new winter coat. Here, she said finally, pointing to a scuffed brick building with peeling paint. She expected Daniel to stop at the curb. Instead, he pulled into a space and was out of the car before she could protest, opening her door and holding out a hand. Let me help, he said, lifting Lily's backpack and steadying Emma as she got out. His fingers brushed her arm, sending an unexpected warmth through her chilled skin. The stairwell smelled faintly of cooking oil from the restaurant below. The wallpaper peeled in strips. On the third floor, Emma unlocked her door, suddenly hyper-aware of every flaw inside. Breakfast dishes in the sink, a basket of unfolded laundry, the old sofa that doubled as her bed. But Lily's fever eclipsed her embarrassment. The bathroom's through there, Emma said, indicating the narrow hallway. Could you wet a washcloth with cool water? Daniel moved efficiently, returning with the washcloth, a glass of water, and the children's pain reliever from the counter without being asked. As Emma settled Lily on the pull-out couch, she noticed Daniel's gaze flick briefly around the apartment. Not in judgment, she realized, but in quiet observation. The crayon drawings covering the fridge, the sewing machine set up in the corner, the carefully mended curtains that still didn't quite conceal the drafty windows. His phone buzzed again. It had been going off sporadically since the car. This time Emma caught a glimpse of the screen before he silenced it. From Victoria, your lawyer can't protect you forever. I know about the offshore accounts. Don't think you can hide them. He clicked the phone dart quickly, but the divide between their lives yawned open again in Emma's mind. Offshore accounts. Lawyers. Bullets and rent notices. I should go, Daniel said quietly, reading her expression. But Emma, please don't let this morning be where this ends. There's something I never told you. Something I've regretted not saying since that last day on Maple Street. A loud knock at the door cut him off. The sound made Lily whimper. Emma checked the peephole. Victoria stood there, gripping her handbag like a weapon, eyes burning with resolve. I can hear you in there, Daniel, she called. Your car's outside. Don't make me shout this in front of all your girlfriend's neighbors. I will. Don't open it, Daniel whispered, his hand finding Emma's shoulder. Please. There's something you need to know first. Victoria isn't just angry about the divorce. She's panicked because I caught her embezzling from my company. She's been siphoning funds for years into accounts I didn't know existed. When I confronted her, she tried to blame my CFO. I have proof. That's why I left her. The pounding grew louder. Daniel. Victoria snapped. I swear to God. Emma glanced at Lily's frightened eyes. I'll handle it, Emma said. She slipped into the hall, shutting the apartment door firmly behind her. Victoria's expression sharpened when she saw Emma. This has nothing to do with me or my daughter, Emma said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. Please leave. Oh, it has everything to do with you, Victoria sneered. Did he tell you about our reconciliation dinner last week? How he begged me to come back? She thrust her phone forward, displaying photos of herself and Daniel at an elegant restaurant. heads bent together in conversation. Emma's stomach dropped. The apartment door opened behind her. Daniel stepped out. "Those pictures are from 2 months ago," he said, voice flat. "Dinner where you tried to talk me into firing James so he couldn't testify about the missing funds." "Stop twisting everything, Victoria." "I helped build that company," she spat. "Those accounts were insurance. If you drag me down, You'll what?" interrupted a new voice from the stairwell. All three turned. A silver-haired woman climbed the last few steps with unhurried grace, her tailored blazer immaculate despite the shabby hallway. Daniel's eyes widened. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "When you missed our breakfast meeting, I had your office trace your phone," Margaret Carter said crisply. "Imagine my surprise when it led me here." Her gaze landed on Emma. For a moment, her stern features softened in recognition. "Little Emma Thompson," she breathed. "Is it really you?" Emma nodded, stunned. Margaret had aged, but the eyes were the same as the woman who used to bring them cookies in Tupperware containers for the treehouse. "Margaret," Victoria began, scrambling to regain control. We were just discussing how you're leaving," Margaret cut in smoothly. "Now, before I call the fraud investigators myself." Color rose in Victoria's cheeks. She opened her mouth, but one look at Margaret's expression made her think better of it. With a last glare at Daniel, she clattered down the stairs on her heels. "Mom," Daniel started. "First," Margaret said, holding up a hand, "we check on that sick child I heard crying. Then we talk about why you didn't mention you'd found Emma." Inside the apartment, Margaret went straight to Lily. Her brisk demeanor melted as she knelt beside the couch. "Hello, sweetheart," she said, smoothing Lily's hair. "I'm Daniel's mommy. Would you like to hear a story about the time he got the chicken pox and cried louder than you are now?" A shaky giggle escaped Lily. Emma tugged Daniel into the cramped kitchen. "Your mother," she murmured. "She's different from what I remember. After Dad died, she changed," Daniel said, leaning against the counter, their shoulders almost touching. "Went back to school, got her MBA. She's been our CFO for 5 years now. She's the one who spotted the discrepancies in the accounts. That's how we caught Victoria." "Why didn't you tell me about any of this at the coffee shop?" Emma asked. "I didn't want to throw all of this at you in the first 5 minutes," he said. "I just wanted to see you, to remember something good." He took a breath. "Remember when I said there was something I regretted not telling you? The day we moved?" Emma nodded. "I had a crush on you," he said quietly. "At 5 years old. I knew you were special even then. The day we buried the time capsule, I snuck in a note you never saw. It said, 'I love Emma. I'm going to marry her someday.'" Her breath caught. "I know it sounds childish," he went on. "But when I saw you this morning counting those coins, that feeling came back. That urge to protect you. To be the one who makes things easier instead of harder." "Daniel," she whispered. "I'm not saying this to pressure you," he said quickly. "Our lives are messy. I just need you to know my feelings aren't some spur-of-the-moment reaction. They're old. And they never really went away." A crash from the living room made them both jump. They rushed out to find Margaret standing protectively in front of Lily, staring at the shattered window. A brick lay amidst the broken glass, a paper wrapped around it. Daniel snatched up the note and unrolled it. His face darkened as he read. "Victoria's threatening to go to the press," he said through his teeth. "She's claiming I've been laundering money."
Total fabrication.
"Of course it is," Emma protested. "She's desperate," Margaret said evenly. "And desperate people are dangerous." Lily began to cry again, frightened by the broken glass and tense voices. Emma scooped her up, murmuring comfort. As she turned, her eye caught a small dancing red dot moving across the wall. "A laser." "Down!" Daniel shouted, lunging. He tackled Emma and Lily to the floor just as another shot exploded through the second window, showering glass where they'd been standing seconds before. Sirens screamed in the distance. Emma curled around Lily as Daniel shielded them both with his body. Across the room, Margaret was already on the phone, barking orders to someone. "Trust me," Daniel whispered into Emma's hair, his arms tight around them. "I won't let anything happen to you. Either of you." And despite the chaos, the danger, the dizzying difference in their lives, Emma believed him. The next hours blurred into flashing lights and official voices. Police officers, detectives, crime scene photographers. Emma sat in a corner, holding a sleeping Lily against her chest, answering the same questions in different ways. The detectives confirmed what they suspected. The shots had come from a building across the street. The shooter was gone. Margaret took command with practiced efficiency, coordinating police, private security, and lawyers all at once. They found Victoria's car abandoned at Logan, Daniel said when he returned from talking to the lead detective. He'd lost his tie along the way, his shirt sleeves rolled up. She used her passport. They think she's on her way to the Caymans. I've already frozen everything we can trace, Margaret added grimly. But she had time to move some funds. Still, we have more than enough to put her away. Emma glanced around her wrecked apartment. The bridesmaid's dress dangling from her sewing rack, forgotten. The bullet-shattered windows. The police tape. You can't stay here tonight, Daniel said, kneeling in front of her. It's not safe. Your mother's already arranged for us to use the company's secure apartment in Back Bay, Margaret said. All of us. Including Lily. I can't just leave, Emma protested weakly. I have clients. Lily has school. Emma, Daniel said gently, taking her free hand. Let us help. Please. I've lost you once. I can't. He swallowed. I can't risk it happening again. She looked into his eyes. Beneath the fear and determination, she saw the same boy who'd once stood in their treehouse doorway. A stick in his hand, promising to protect her from dragons. Some things she realized didn't change. She packed a small bag for herself and Lily while the police finished up. Lily stirred, fever dulled by medicine, and blinked up at her. Mommy, she murmured. Are we going on an adventure? Emma forced a smile. Yes, baby. Just for a little while. The company apartment turned out to be a penthouse, all glass and chrome, with sweeping views of the city. Under any other circumstances, Emma might have felt swallowed by it. Tonight, she only registered the quiet, the warmth, and the discreet presence of security in the lobby and halls. She tucked Lily into a guest room bed big enough to swallow their entire pull-out couch. Is Mr. Daniel your prince? Lily asked sleepily. Like in my stories? Emma smoothed her hair and checked her forehead. The fever was finally ebbing. It's complicated, she said. He looks at you like a prince, Lily mumbled, already half asleep. Later, Emma stood alone at the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the glitter of Boston's lights. Daniel joined her, handing her a mug of tea. Mom's gone to meet with the FBI, he said. They're optimistic. Victoria's left a long paper trail. Emma turned. Why didn't you tell me about the embezzlement sooner? I didn't want to drag you into it, he said. When I saw you in that line, it felt like I'd been given this miracle. A second chance I never thought I'd get. I was afraid if I told you everything you'd bolt. She studied him for a moment. Why were you at that coffee shop, Daniel? Really? I told you my office is nearby, he said lightly. Out of everyone in Boston, she said quietly. You just happened to walk into my neighborhood shop at 7 a.m.? He sighed, then pulled out his phone. He scrolled to a photo and handed it to her. It was an old newspaper clipping from 3 years earlier. Emma at a small fashion show, standing shyly beside a rack of altered vintage clothes. I never stopped thinking about you, he said. Over the years I'd Google your name sometimes, just hoping. When I found this article, I knew you were still in Boston. I started going to that cafe because it was closest to the address on the piece. For 6 months I went there every morning hoping you'd walk in. Her throat tightened. 6 months. I knew it was near your neighborhood, he said. I could have tried to track you down directly, but it felt wrong. Like an invasion. So I waited. And when I finally saw you, counting out change for a small coffee, it took everything I had not to run across the room. He stepped closer, his hand finding hers. I know this isn't what either of us would have chosen, he said. Guns, ex-wives, FBI agents. But in a way, all those barriers, time, money, circumstance, they're gone now. What matters is that after 23 years, my heart still recognizes yours. Emma thought of the note in the time capsule she'd never seen, of the battered toy car she'd kept on her shelf. of him crouched on her living room floor, wrapping Lily in his arms as glass shattered around them. When Victoria's caught, she said slowly. And this is over, then what? Then, Daniel said, smile curving. I'd like to take you on a proper date. No lawyers. No gunfire. No fevers. Just you and me, getting to know each other again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, placing it in her palm. She looked down. A battered Hot Wheels car. Her breath caught. It was hers, the same one she'd taken from the time capsule all those years ago. He must have seen it on her bedroom shelf in the chaos earlier. How did you? Some treasures, he said softly, are worth keeping close. 3 months later, on a bright winter morning, Emma stood in the doorway of her newly expanded boutique on Newberry Street. Emma's vintage revivals gleamed in gold script above the entrance. The display windows showcased her own designs mingled with carefully altered vintage pieces. The charges against Victoria had stuck. She'd been arrested in Grand Cayman and was awaiting trial. With Margaret's steady guidance, Daniel's company had not only recovered but grown stronger. The bell over the door chimed. Daniel and Lily walked in, each carrying a cardboard box. Ready for lunch? Daniel asked, leaning in to kiss her cheek. Almost, she said, smiling. What's in the boxes? It's a surprise, Lily announced. For the treehouse. Emma raised an eyebrow. Daniel just shrugged, trying for innocent. Every home needs a treehouse, he said. Even if that home's a brownstone in Beacon Hill. As she turned the sign to closed and locked the door, Emma slipped her hand into her coat pocket. Her fingers brushed a small velvet box. Inside was the Hot Wheels car, painstakingly restored, and a tiny folded note. Want to share a treehouse forever? She already knew what his answer would be.